course, was a great run for Oral Roberts, former Baylor assistant coach Paul Mills, a fantastic friend of our show. Oral Roberts, head coach Paul Mills joins us. Craig Smoke and David Smoke on Sic'Em 365 Radio. I know this year didn't go as you wanted, but in the end, kind of, if you don't mind to start off with this, great to have you on. What do you feel like where you are with your program following this year and moving forward?
Craig, David, thanks for having me, number one. And the reality is for every college coach in the country, only one of us is going to be happy. Mm-hmm. So there's 358 of us, and last year Scott Drew was the lucky one. This year, the rest is to be decided. But, you know, as a program, I think the thing that you're always trying to evaluate is not necessarily the destination, but the direction. Everybody has the same destination. You would like to win a national championship, but are you headed in that direction? And so for me, I've been a part of two rebuilds, one at Baylor for 14 seasons. And our second year there, we won one game in the entire conference season. And then my last year there, we were number one in the country. So I watched the pendulum swing on that. When I came here in the rebuild, we had 6 Division I wins. And, you know, in 5 years, we've more than tripled that. And actually, you know, have more tournament wins than the history of the school last year. And this year we had more conference wins than we've had in the past decade. And so what you're always trying to figure out is, are you headed in the right direction? And we've made progress here each and every year. Been fortunate to recruit 2 All-Americans. We had another All-American this year, and we've had 19 all-conference selections during my time here. So we're recruiting the right guys. We're developing the right guys. And fortunately for us, it's translating into wins. It hasn't translated to a national championship yet, but that is the destination.
Coach, having been part of a lot of NCAA tournaments, we were talking to King McClure the other day, and I was asking him from a player's perspective, you know, how do you go about trying not to overthink, okay, it's the tournament now? And, you know, and so many times coaches talk about just, you know, keeping it steady and keeping focused and all of that. But is it hard to kind of navigate the feelings of the team and even the staff, the excitement level of being in the tournament, and how do you navigate that?
Well, I think it all depends on how experienced you are. You know, in 2014, we had an experienced team, and we ended up losing in the first round. And the same thing happened again the following year. And then in 2016, we were able to have a team that was really, really dialed in and was able to go in. And I think that was the year that we went to the Sweet 16. We started off 2-8 in conference and really struggled, but we had a group that really believed and won. Ended up going to the Sweet 16 that year with a quality team. And so I think that every single year is different because of the experience. You know, Scott called me last night at 10:45 and was talking to him. And so I think that what happens is for a lot of guys, it is how experienced are you? You know, what is your mental makeup? I think for Jeremy and Kendall and freshmen, it'll be a little bit new. And then you have your guys who've been around in Adam and Matthew and James Akinjo, who's been in these environments, that all of those things, the experience factored in with the inexperience, those guys can really help. Obviously last year's group, you know, with Maceo Teague and Butler. And I mean, all those guys, they were really experienced. Mark Vidal was in like his 11th year playing college ball. So all of those things really, really help. And I think this year they've been in enough hard games. The gauntlet of the Big 12 really prepares you. And I think those guys will be fine, but it's obviously different for each and every player.
So they have had, and you've seen him do this before, back when Tristan Clark got hurt, but they had to reinvent themselves when Jonathan Chamachacha went out, LJ Cryer, and they've had other injuries along the way, Sohan, Flagler, Akinjo, and the tailbone injury. Your thoughts about how quickly they did that, and I'm sure you weren't surprised they were able to do that, and then they found themselves in the mix to win another conference championship.
Yeah, it just an incredible job by everybody there. And you know, I think that what you've seen is when Jonathan went down, you've seen Flo really assert himself. And, you know, all of a sudden Flo's out there getting double-doubles. And you knew that he was capable, but obviously being able to play minutes that you're fresh and having Jonathan being able to come in some of those moments, it kind of helps. But then, you know, when Jonathan's out and a lot gets thrown on your shoulders, you realize that, man, I need to step up in a number of different ways. And I think what you've seen is really an assertion of Flo and his ability to really jump in. Kendall and Jeremy are obviously really talented. And then, you know, when Adam gets going, he's so fun to watch just because of his ability to make shots. And James' ability, just, you know, being recognized yesterday as an All-American, and everybody knows how quickly Matthew can heat up. But, I mean, you're dealing with six guys who, four of those six, I have a lot of experience. Kendall and Jeremy, I wouldn't consider freshmen anymore, given the number of games that they played. But the reality is that Scott can do a good job of kind of moving pieces around, and then it's incumbent upon the players when a bigger load is asked of you that you step up. And to Flo's credit, he's really done that.
Coach, back early in December, you guys played on the road at TCU. TCU makes a tournament, will face Seton Hall, and they gave some Big 12 teams fits down the stretch. You know, obviously had some big wins there. Did you see something kind of then building with TCU? Did you think that they were, you know, a tournament-capable team at that time? And just what did you think of meeting them then and seeing where they are now?
Yeah, I mean, we finished top 5 in the country in 7 different categories. And one of them was defensive rebounding. We finished 5th in the country in defensive rebounding. Well, TCU can really rebound. And I remember walking out of that game, we ended up losing by 3 possessions. And I was like, I think we're halfway decent at rebounding. I didn't know we'd end up top 5 in the country. But I had no idea just how good TCU was. And you knew that they were really talented, really good, that they were going to be tough on their home floor. But they are a phenomenal rebounding team. They have a player who can go get you a bucket in Mike Miles this late in the year. And they're just super solid defensively. I wouldn't tell you that I think Baylor is elite at times defensively, and you've seen glimpses of that out of TCU. But they are solid defensively, and they have a player who can go get you a bucket. And this time of year, that stuff really matters when you're in droughts. And the other thing about them is they've got really good depth, and those things will really aid. And the playing in the Big 12 conference, you walk into you walk into NCAA games and you go, wow, this isn't the Big 12. It's tough, but you realize that from a Big 12 perspective, that a lot of teams don't measure up talent-wise. Doesn't mean you're going to win, but it really prepares you.
You had, and I hope it's okay for me to bring it up, I have to, you had that run last year, but all of a sudden the transfer portal hurt you. It can help you, and it can also take it away. How much did it hurt? And we've seen what he's done with O'Banner at Texas Tech.
Yeah, I mean, I'd have to disagree with you there, Smokey. We added from the transfer portal. We got a young man from Vanderbilt, got another young man from Oklahoma, and the reality is we were better. We were better offensively. It didn't play that way out in regards to the NCAA tournament, okay. But I would tell you that our league got better. We were 13-2. Finished 3rd against everybody below us in our conference. We were 0-5 against the 2 teams above us, and they were 2. They had super seniors. They were 2 of the top 10 experienced teams in the country, and I didn't have any 4-year guys, and all my guys were sophomore and juniors. But we had the experience of the NCAA tournament, and so I wish. Nobody wishes COVID had been around, but if COVID hadn't ever been around, and nobody was playing with 50-year kids, I think it would be different. But we were much better offensively and through the course of the year, and I'm really excited about our guys and where we're headed.
You mentioned that what Scott's done and who they have, and that, of course, we know about their bench. And Craig, and we have now been saying this. Listen, this is who they've been now for a while, and they beat Kansas and Texas in 3 days with who they are now. And then, of course, everyone also remembers your last game with Oklahoma when they shot lights out. Can they be who they were against Kansas and Texas starting tomorrow against Norfolk State?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, to be honest with you, if you look back to a year ago to where they lost to Oklahoma State in the opener and then, losing this year to Oklahoma, if you know Scott at all, he is like superstitious. And I'm not telling you that he threw the game, but the extra rest and the extra practice. I remember, visiting with Jerome and Scott. We all got together when we were in Indianapolis, and he says, I think we're back to our old ways. And I said, what do you mean? And he said, man, we were really able to practice and get dialed in on defensively the things that we needed. And then all of a sudden, you see Davion just really out there back to his old self. And so I think that the extra rest, the extra practice time, I think you see this, Illinois ended up winning the Big Ten, and then Brad Underwood was happy to some degree. He says, I'm not disappointed at all that we've lost in the Big Ten tournament, because last year they lose in order to advance to the Sweet 16. And he says, our guys were so drained from that tournament. Now, those guys play through Sunday, and they're the last team to play. And so I would just tell you from a physical standpoint, it's really hard on those guys. But I'm telling you, the extra rest, the extra practice is really, really going to help Baylor, very similar to it did a year ago. And so much of this is coming down to matchups. I think they have really good matchups.
Coach, sorry for the general question here, but there's just so many games and so many teams, obviously with this large tournament. Was there, when the bracket was released, maybe a region or a pairing, or is there just a team in general that you've kind of had your eye on here as of late that's maybe playing a little bit hot? What were kind of your initial impressions of seeing the bracket?
Well, I got to tell you, it's like death through 1,000 cut selection Sunday if you're not in.
Yeah.
It's Christmas morning if you are. It's tough if you're not. The only reason I looked at a bracket is because I had to attend a bracketology event with Joe Lenardi, and he's smarter than me on all this stuff on Monday morning at 7:30. So I'm just listening to Joe and paying attention. Looking through it, just looking through the bracket, you're always trying to identify, an upset's coming, right? The reality of that. And you're trying to figure out where that may be, what teams are playing well, what teams are healthy. And there's no specific region. I think that Arizona is playing really well, and their level of pace and their ability to defend multiple positions with their personnel is huge. I think that, kind of like a number of players, you have to go through losing before you really realize winning. I think that's what's happened to Gonzaga and Drew Timme and Chet Holmgren. I mean, those two as a pair, maybe as good as we've seen in a while. I think Chet's probably a once-in-a-decade kind of player. And then as you look through Baylor's, you look through Kansas, the two other Big 12. I don't think that anything is surprising, but the reality is these are really, really tough games, and you can't ever look ahead. And I can assure you that Baylor is focused on Norfolk State, but I think it's North Carolina and somebody in that next one. And your focus better be on Norfolk State and get your players. Baylor has a mantra of trying to go 1-0, and you better just try to go 1-0 and then refocus on the next one. But the tournament's the greatest tournament in the world because the best teams in the world are in it. So these are always fun events.
How dangerous is South Dakota State?
Really good. They can really shoot. If you look at it, they have 3 of the top 15 shooters in the country. They're older, and so when you have guys that are older, but they're the number 1 3-point shooting team in the country. To give you an idea, and they shoot 44%. I think there are, as a team, they shoot 44%. I think if you look at it, there's actually 11 players who shoot better than 44%, and they do it collectively. So their ability to shoot is kind of mind-boggling when you look at the numbers. And so it's, man, can you push out on those guys, run them off the line, and then can you make them play through you when they shoot twos? And it's easier said than done. And we ended up losing an overtime game to them here, but they're a really good team. But I've seen Providence a little bit. I know how much the Big East prepares those guys, and so that'll be a heck of a ball game.
Last thing, and I appreciate you, and I know that conference is incredibly competitive, and you're going to get them back to where you want to be and they need to be. How much can you put into words, money, or even momentum, what last year's tournament run meant to you in not only the transfers that you got, but also moving forward?
Yeah, I mean, what we've seen, I think we saw a 12% increase in enrollment. I know one guy watched us play, and he's been a supporter of the university, but he said, what do you need in order to really accelerate? And we needed a practice facility, and he said, hey, let me give you $25 million to start that.
Wow.
And so the city of Tulsa was behind us. I think that there were some 160 million impressions where people were Googling or trying to identify where is Oral Roberts, what is ORU, and it's a Christian school located in Tulsa. And so I think that you really can't put into words if you tried to get the same money through advertisement dollars, you're probably talking in the hundreds of millions. And so the media generated from a run like that helps. And more importantly, it's a memory that your players will never forget. And it's also something that they'll strive towards. And so the whole idea of where excellence is as a standard helps. But at the same time, you're helping young men and their families to remember something that they'll never forget. And I think at the end of the day, people remember how you make them feel. And if you can make people feel valued through a sport, and they have something to cheer for because you're doing it the right way, I don't think that there's a dollar number you could ever put on that.
Can I ask you one more thing, if you don't mind?
Absolutely.
You've gone through a season, a tournament, and people have been interested in you and eventually the Oral Roberts opportunity. Grant McCaslin, North Texas, Matt Driscoll, of course, with North Florida. You know that your great friend Jerome Tang was last year involved in teams or programs that wanted him, and his name's up again. At least you hear it, and it should be, of some of the openings. How hard is that to deal with that? I know Jerome sent me a text. I'm worried about getting us a win on Thursday. That's the way he is. That's the way it should be. But is that kind of at times something that's kind of hard to balance?
No, honest to goodness, he's experienced at it. I'm keenly aware of all the jobs that he's turned down because we talk quite often. And so I'm very aware of the opportunities that have been extended, and he just at that particular time didn't think it was best for, more importantly, his family, because Jerome could pack up and move anywhere. If Iceland offered him a job, he could go do it. But he's so cognizant, obviously, of his wife and his children, and so he's very much aware of that. For him, I would tell you that if you're younger, it's probably a distraction. But for him, I just think that he's been through this so much, obviously being with Scott for 19 years, having opportunities to leave on multiple occasions. I mean, people have tried to pluck him as an assistant and multiple times. And he's been very loyal to the mission at Baylor, wants to continue to do that. But he's a veteran. He's been around this block a time or two, and so he knows how to handle it. But it's really not a question of if he'll be a head coach. It's just a matter of when. And obviously Grant being as successful, Matt Driscoll is the all-time leader at North Florida. Scott prepares all of us well, and it's a matter of time, and Jerome will kill it.
Thank you, Paul. We appreciate it.
But the same is true for Jacobs, and the same is true for Coach Brooks.
Yeah.
And it's really true for all those guys, simply because of the way that Scott models leadership for us.
Thank you very much. Appreciate you giving us time, Paul. Look forward to seeing you soon. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Paul Mills, head basketball coach at Oral Roberts, with us on many things: the tournament, South Dakota State, who won the league he's in, and others, including Baylor's reinvention and a little bit about Jerome.